see it opens out. We'll just stop there and get used to the dark. It's so bright outside today that you'll see like absolutely adjust to the dark. There's a gate that we have to crawl under here, so we have to hold it up for each other. It's the middle pivot gate.
Alright?
Yep.
You got it?
Yep.
That's it.
If you're standing here, get used to the dark. Bear in mind that this would be, originally probably only about less than 2 metres high and about just over ½ a metre wide. What happens with the air coming in and out, because of the natural ventilation of the mine, is that this soft rock that the mine's driven in decays and falls off over the years. So what's happened is it's sort of gradually enlarged itself. You can see there's heaps of fallen material here, which is why it seems so big. But as we progress into the mine, you'll see it's a much smaller appearance as we go along. Things to look out for as we go in. There's railway track on the ground, which eventually will come out of the water. And you'll see drill holes. Method of mining was a big hand drill, probably about this long. 2 guys worked together, one holding it, one hitting the hammer, and they would drill a full set of holes in a day and then use, in the 19th century anyway, gunpowder to blast. And you'll see drill holes on the sides and the roof as we go along. This entrance bit we're stood in here, there was a guy who had a mining lease in the 1960s and 70s, and a few of us, me and Peter Wilkins and others, worked with him. And what Peter and the gang did here, where we're stood, is tried to drain this entrance section. The water used to be a lot deeper, and the material that's behind us to my right is what was dug up at that time to try and, because this entrance section was quite full of like shaly stuff that had fallen off the roof.
I mean, there were circumstances like he wore specs, had bad eyesight, lost his specs, his lamp had gone out, he was 17 from a poor background, and he was on like one of these character building field trips. And all the leaders, the qualified guys, were at the front of the group. And he fell down the shaft, which didn't have to be drilled at the time. Well, it's angle out. So yeah, a solitary lesson. You can see we're getting drippy water here, and that's mainly because this is surface water, believe it or not, even though it is so dry. Right where I'm stood, where this walling is and the water's running down here, this is a shaft that went right up to the surface. It's actually by the side of the trackway as you go to the valley on the left-hand side. It's completely filled in, we think. And where that timber is, about halfway back to the entrance, where we met those 2 guys, there is another shaft there which also comes up to the surface. Again, it's filled in. That was the standard method of working. They would drive a tunnel a bit short distance in, put a shaft up to the surface, and then that created a through ventilation circuit. And somehow that had the effect of also ventilating the mine further in. They found empirically that it would also generate enough movement of air beyond the last shaft, if you like, to keep where they were working clear as well, which just sort of generates an air current around the whole mine.
You'll notice that the tunnel's much larger now, and we're actually in harder rock than we were, say, 40 metres back. And that's because the first bit of the tunnel we're in was originally driven as an exploratory tunnel where we came through that fall and crawled through that low section. And then the rock was so hard, and this was about 1800 we're talking about, they abandoned the working and they called it the hard crosscut. Later on, because they needed to create a ventilation circuit, they decided to continue the tunnel, the bit where it stood in. And so this is like about 1818, 1820. And you can see they're still using the same methods, gunpowder and hand drilling, and the rock's just as hard, but for some reason they took it out much larger. Obviously it's great for us now. Digress for a second into geology. The rocks around here are laid down horizontally, and that's how roughly we still find them. If you look at the roof of this particular hole we're in, you can see a very gentle slope, and that's because the rock's been tilted ever so slightly millions of years ago, and so they're not quite horizontal here. Now, what made this mine so famous and so productive in economic terms was the fact that the mineralisation is normally found vertical in like a fault in the ground, semi-vertical anyway. But here, for some reason, that was not the case. The mineralisation is found horizontally, replacing this particular limestone bed we're in, fairly irregularly. There's various theories about why that happens, but it doesn't really matter. But the main thing is this is what they found. And what we know from the records of the time, the manager's journal, and we're talking about 1820 and just before, is that in places it was like, they said, like a solid room filled with lead ore. So whereas it was economic to work, say, a 6-inch strip of lead ore normally, here they just had, as far as the eye could see, lead ore, which you can imagine the company at that time made a vast amount of profit, which financed actually a lot of the mine workings that carried on here into the rest of the 19th century. When you touch it, you can see it's just soft, and it's iron pyrites, what is it, FeS2, and then when it interacts with water it decays to this. And it's just the ventilation, the water, the humidity of the air coming from outside that does it. But there's other places, you walk on a bit further, and there'll be another cavity, and it's got the FeS2 just sitting there, not affected. It's obviously due to the minor metal, other elements that are mixed in with it afterwards. Eventually, when it gets a bit more yellowy, they call it anchorite. Or if you've done an analysis of it, it's all slightly different. Basically, it's just calcium magnesium carbonate.